joke. They're calling it a National Guard. Oh, thank God, you know. Um,
It was 1989. Protests had erupted in Beijing against the Deng regime of China. Images of the protests and the government's response were splashed across TV screens and newspapers.
Ben-Gvir was on national television before Robin was murdered with his car emblem. Yeah, and he said, literally a week before he was murdered, he said, "We got to his car. Next, we will get to him." And then he got fucking murdered. Ben-Gvir was literally designated as a terrorist by Israel, okay? It's like if Osama bin Laden was like, "No, dog, you're going too far. Let's fucking calm down," to a guy who's like a bigger fucking terrorist, okay? Like, it's insane. Now, that is going to be very frustrating for people as a pill to swallow, okay? People are going to be like, "Dude, what the fuck? How dare you?" Let's say Saddam Hussein then. Is that better? Like, come on. He was not allowed to serve in the military. He now has his own Praetorian Guard, but he was not allowed to serve in the IDF because he was too racist for the IDF. Understand what I'm saying here. In order to be designated designated as a terrorist by Israel, you have to be seriously bad or a Palestinian child. No, I'm saying like as an Israeli to be designated as an Israeli terrorist by the Israeli government, you literally have to be completely unhinged. I'm at the protest. Ben-Gvir is insane. He literally just formed the Israeli version of the SS. It's beyond insane that he has so much support, like a sixth of the population is supporting him. Yeah, the other part of Ben-Gvir's insanity is not just that like he wants to ethnically cleanse Palestinians. That much is clear. He wants to kill Jews too. Like he wants to literally fuck over like liberal Jews too. That's part of the reason why a lot of people are fucking protesting it. Like that's why he's considered a fucking terrorist, okay? It's insanity. And by the way, for those of you who are, new to this kind of thing, it literally is expected. This is how fascist movements end up creating such exclusionary projects that you have to make the in-group, smaller and smaller and smaller. This is why we always say fascism is a suicidal ideology, okay? The in-group is going to ultimately move away from Palestinians when they are completely fucking ethnically cleansed, right? When they are ultimately powerless, as they are now, okay? They are going to move in to liberal Jews, liberal Israelis, gay Israelis, Israelis that want to get an abortion, Israelis that want to marry someone who's not Israeli. And then they're going to go back once again, like they did in the original formation, to Israelis that are Ashkenazi Jews. You know what I mean? Because that's the other part of this equation, that like Judaism is an international an ethno-religious identity, which means that there are Jews from all different kinds of backgrounds, okay? And originally, in its formation, there were certain Jews from specific backgrounds that were not considered to be as good as the other Jews. That's where you're going to get to. You're going to get Sephardic Jews that are going to be targeted. You're going to have the Mizrahis. You're going to have the fucking... ultimately, you are going to get to... it's already happening with Ethiopian Jews anyway. And it's going to become smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. The in-group always becomes smaller and smaller, okay? That's how it fucking works. We will end the fascist coup if you give us a fascist secret police force. Far-right Otzma Yehudit Party to support freezing coup legislation in exchange for establishing a national guard under Ben-Gvir. Fascist terror militia signed and sealed. There you go. All I'm going to say is this for liberal Israelis that are tuning in, that are watching. This is a byproduct of not having, for lack of a better term, CRT in Israel, okay? That's it. If your national project revolves on doing basically the same shit that, basically the same shit that's currently happening and ongoing, okay? And you turn a blind eye to that, then there are always going to be people that say, it's not enough. It's not enough. We need to do more of it. This is a big problem in America as well. It's a major problem in the United States of America as well, with respect to the same attitudes that people have here. Fascists. That's how they do it. They take advantage of blindness that people have to the actual ongoing oppression, ongoing forms of oppression that is normalized in society, and just demand more of the very same. When you hear, for example, Steven Crowder or Ben Shapiro talk about police brutality in black communities and say, we need more of this, they're looking at the existing forms of oppression, right? Police being an occupying force in black neighborhoods, and saying that everyone chirping about this is lying, okay, feeding into the blind spot that people have, and then demanding more of it. In some respects, that's precisely what Ben Gvir is doing in Israel, and other far-right ethno-statists are doing in Israel. And they will take away your civil liberties that you have that you take for granted.
Papers around the globe. The world was fully captivated by this momentous event, and its images have remained some of the most iconic in history. It was this intense and sustained coverage that appeared as an opportunity to others. The same year as Tiananmen Square, a prominent Israeli politician, Benjamin Bibi Netanyahu, who had just served as Israel's representative to the United Nations, was speaking to students at Bar Ilan University, where he was quoted as saying, "Israel should have exploited the repression of the demonstrations in China, when world attention focused on that country, to carry out mass expulsions among the Arabs of the territories. Regrettably, there was no support for this policy." But that's not entirely correct. Perhaps it was not popular mainstream sentiment at the time, but there were some Israelis who sided with Netanyahu on this issue. In 1981, a Dr. Baruch Goldstein.
Before we get to this, sorry. Look no further than Netanyahu's own attitude towards settler terrorism over his rise to power and continued reinforcement in power. I am old enough to remember that Israel went from, oh no, we shouldn't be bulldozing these fucking houses, to we turned Jerusalem and every other place where Palestinians live into a fucking parking lot, deliberately dissecting their communities and building roads from within their communities with the express purpose of making sure that they are completely decentralized and cannot live their everyday existence, while simultaneously engaging in acts of expulsion and also displacement, mass displacement. They did that. There was a time and place when the Israeli government's official attitude towards settler terrorism was, oh, we're just turning a blind eye to it, but like we don't really like it. It wasn't that the idea would come in with fucking guns drawn and forcibly expel Palestinians from their fucking homes so they can bulldoze it and then build an apartment complex on top of it. Yes, Israeli settlers can carry AR-15s around those neighborhoods, whereas it is illegal to own a firearm as a Palestinian. Yes.
Penned a letter to the editors of the New York Times. Israel must act decisively to remove the Arab minority from within its borders. Years after writing this letter, Goldstein would don his Israeli military uniform and arm himself with his army-issued Galil automatic rifle. He'd then walk into the Ibrahimi Mosque in the old city of Hebron, located in the occupied West Bank. When worshippers bowed their heads to the floor during Islamic prayer, Goldstein unloaded magazine after magazine into the crowd, firing at anything that moved. Hundreds of people would be hit, and in the end, at least 29 were killed in the mosque that day. In Israel, as well as the Palestinian territories, the outrage over this atrocity was immense. It stalled peace talks and created civil unrest among Palestinians. Dozens more would be killed by Israeli forces in the ensuing protests. Many familiar with this event know that the killings themselves aren't the end of the story. Following the massacre, Clyde Haberman of the New York Times would report on the ground from Hebron at Baruch Goldstein's gravesite. The title of the article? Hundreds of Jews gather to honor Hebron killer.
1994, these kinds of atrocities were actually criticized. Didn't really mean much, but were criticized at least by the international community. Now it's a part of everyday existence. And, when the state does it, it's a little bit different, right? When the state is engaging in what they call mowing the lawn in Gaza, for example, that is seen as like an act of retaliation. How far we have come from 1994 is crazy. And even back then, it was insanely violent. Do not misunderstand me. That is also Maggie Haberman's dad who wrote that article. Maggie Haberman is a Nepo baby. Whatever, who cares? Fuck Maggie Haberman. I don't give a shit. The New York Times is full of Nepo babies.
Haberman writes, in a steady stream, they came by the hundreds today to the grave of Baruch Goldstein, many bowing deeply to kiss the tombstone of the Hebron mass killer and to proclaim him a holy man. Many journeyed here by car and bus. Whether young or old, they approached the burial mound, surrounded by stones placed in mourning, as though it were a shrine. Dozens hugged and kissed the tombstone. Some kneeled to kiss the grave itself, including one young man who cried out, "Hero of Israel, hero of Israel, there should be more like him." Haberman continues, while the Israelis who worship the Brooklyn-born Dr. Goldstein are a small minority, the numbers turning out today suggested that they may be more than the minuscule fraction the government claims. Indeed, the support appears to be beyond just nameless civilians. Dov Lior, the chief rabbi of the Kiryat Arba settlement of Hebron, where Baruch Goldstein lived, called him holier than all the martyrs of the Holocaust. The Jerusalem Post described Lior as one of the most high-profile national religious rabbis in the country. As a result of this mass shooting, the Israeli government outlawed the radical Kach party, of which Baruch Goldstein was a member. Another member was a young Itamar Ben.
There it is, Ben Gvir. This man just got his own Gestapo. This man just got his own secret police, literally like a couple hours ago. Part of Netanyahu's far-right coalition government. The reason why he spent 4 minutes describing this shit was because of this man right here. Ben motherfucking Gvir.
Ben Gvir.
No, not confirmed or proposed. Confirmed. Confirmed. Signed and sealed.
Who joined the party when he was just 16. He would go on to become the party's youth leader. Ben Gvir remained politically active.
No. You're misunderstanding. Not yet in a couple months. No. Confirmed now so that they would be, the far-right coalition government would then say, okay, we're not going to fucking, we're going to allow you to pass the buck down a month into the future for what do you call it, for pushing the evisceration of the judiciary a month into the future. That's it. That was the conditions. They said they're not going to fucking protest it. The far right is going to allow the Netanyahu government to avoid the top of the hour ad break, which comes at the top of every hour. Obviously, if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe, which you could do for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime, or by getting gifted a sub if you're lucky. Yeah. Yeah, no shame. I know. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. All right, let's continue.
Following the outlawing of Kach, and is now famously the leader of the Otzma Yehudit, or Jewish Power Party. Otzma Yehudit is believed by Israelis to be the
Jewish Power Party.
spiritual successor to the Kach party. Ben-Gvir has a colorful past filled with calls for ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. In fact, he was so radical in his politics that he was barred from conscription into the Israeli military. To underscore his devotion to extremism, Ben-Gvir hung a poster of Baruch Goldstein on the wall of his living room. He reportedly took it down in 2019 in an unsuccessful attempt to appease Naftali Bennett, who vetoed his inclusion into his right-wing coalition over the poster. It's not known whether he put it back up afterward. Of course, Ben-Gvir has now become the Minister of Security of the State of Israel, in what is Israel's most right-wing government, possibly in history. At the Otzma Yehudit campaign launch in 2019, Ben-Gvir thanked his spiritual mentor, none other than Dov Lior, and brought him on stage to resounding applause. As Minister of National Security, Ben-Gvir holds one of the most important positions in Bibi Netanyahu's new cabinet. Ben-Gvir has called for harsher crackdowns on Palestinian militants and their supporters, as well as strict curfews in Palestinian villages, and mass deportations and targeted killings of terrorism suspects. Ben-Gvir would also like...
Yeah, terrorism suspect doing, that's a very liberal interpretation. Remember, if you live in occupied West Bank and you travel as a Palestinian, you travel out of it, you might not ever be able to go back to your home, see your children, see your family. They will literally expel you and say, you're gone. It's over. It's a wrap. GG's. Think about that. How fucking nuts is that?
To authorize a shoot-to-kill policy for Palestinians who throw stones at Israelis.
So I did get a 10-minute chill out from chat, lasting almost an hour because I couldn't spend it in here because it's tiring to listen to all this midnight EU just because I asked Hasan, does he think that his views can be wrong sometimes in retrospective? Yes, my views can be wrong sometimes in retrospective, but right now we're talking about like universal principles, you know what I mean?
In these beliefs, he's also joined by the new finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich. Smotrich, leader of the religious Zionist party, is no stranger to controversy himself. In 2021, he told Arab lawmakers in the Knesset that they are in Israel by mistake because founder of Israel David Ben-Gurion didn't, quote, finish the job when expelling the Arabs.
אני איתכם לא מדבר, אנטי-ציונים, תומכי טרור, אויבים. אתם פה בטעות, כי בן-גוריון לא גמר את העבודה ולא זרק אתכם ב-48.
This is why I said it's like a little bit more aggressive than America. Like in America, we obviously systematically undermine the existence of black people, right? Or Native Americans all the time. But like, you don't have, I don't know, you have like, what's his fucking face? Stephen King, right? But even Stephen King cannot go out and literally say that to a black politician. Not Stephen King, Steve King, sorry. Not the author. I'm talking about, of course, the congressperson. Like, so in some respects, Israel is like ahead of the game when it comes to like open racism. Like, could you imagine Steve King fucking like going up? I mean, he's a white nationalist. We know he is, right? Like, we know he's a fucking racist, right? Could you imagine him going up in Congress and like pointing to a fucking black politician and just straight up being like, it's an accident that you're here, like you're a slave. You know what I mean? Dude, they're racist fuck against other Jewish people who are darker skinned and not European. Yes, I know. That's what I'm saying. Because, and this is my message to liberal Israelis that are like, Hasan, you're so harsh about this shit. You're so harsh. You're so harsh. Brother, they're coming after you too, motherfucker, eventually. I mean, you know, that's the fascist playbook. That's how this fucking works. They will always look for new enemies. They will always look for new methods of exclusion. They already do that to the Ethiopians. They already do that to the Arabs. Okay? They will eventually go through the different ethnic groups in Israel like they once did in the past. If I'm not mistaken, I thought Sephardic Jews were also considered like lesser than for the longest time, right? Like originally. Yeah, Sephardic Jews were oppressed in Israel for a very long time. Ben Gvir himself, by the way, is, again, if I'm not mistaken, a Sephardic Jew. So what happens to Sephardic Jews when they become a part of the in-group, white, if you will? If you want to use like American terminology, white. What happened? Became more fucking radicalized than anybody else. He's a Middle Eastern Jew. Sorry, yeah, Middle Eastern Jews like Mizrahi Jews. Not even Sephardic Jews. Mizrahi Jews are also oppressed similarly. Yeah. The Black Panthers were an Israeli protest movement of second-generation Jewish immigrants from North Africa and Middle Eastern countries. It was one of the first organizations in Israel with a mission of working for social justice for Sephardi and Mizrahi Jews. Literally. In its original formation, Israel was like, yeah, no Sephardis and no Mizrahi Jews. Like, they were oppressed differently. I did not know about these Jewish ethnic denominations. Yes, it's a little bit more complicated than, it's not as black and white. You can't judge from 1960 people, says King Israel 69. Brother, the reason why I'm bringing this shit up is because this happened once and it's gonna happen again. The entire point is, the entire point that I'm trying to make here is that, like, fascist movements always have to find a new enemy internally. Okay? For Hitler, for example, it was the Übermensch. Hitler did not consider the Slavs to be white, which Slavs are obviously considered white now, almost universally. But also on top of that, even internally within Germany, it wasn't just the Volk. It was always going to move on to the Übermensch, a specific type of Volkish people that were going to be the next group of individual Germans that were actually promoted and prospered. Down to the fucking height. Because you always have to fucking make your in-group smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay? That's it. Because it's built around the concept of exclusion. It's a never-ending battle. This is why I'm saying that, like, You justify it on the one end when it comes to the apartheid conditions for Palestinian people. It's going to come back and bite you in the fucking ass. It is literally doing it right now.
Smotrich and Ben-Gvir will enjoy free reign under Prime Minister Netanyahu, back as premier after a less than 2-year hiatus. As a result, we'll surely be seeing harsher treatment of Palestinians. And what's looking increasingly likely is the outright annexation of the occupied West Bank. Smotrich is insisting that the civil administration of the West Bank be transferred to his finance ministry, a move that is seen by many to be de facto annexation already. By taking the civil administration of the West Bank out of the hands of the military and into civilian control, it will be administered by the federal government of Israel. On top of that, the border police operations of the West Bank will be relinquished to the newly named National Security Ministry, which will in fact be headed by Itamar Ben-Gvir.
All of this happened, by the way.
Along with expanding settlements and annexing the West Bank, Benjamin Netanyahu's history of steady invasions and saturation bombings of Palestinians, particularly in Gaza, will have to be closely watched. And I strongly advise everyone watching this now to prepare for this likely scenario, and to diligently update yourselves on news coming out of Gaza. Remember at the beginning of this video when I read you that Bibi quote saying that he wishes he'd used the Tiananmen Square massacre as an opportunity to expel Arabs from the occupied territories? Be wary of this pattern in the future. Like in 2014, when Bibi launched a ground invasion on the same exact day that Malaysia Flight 17 was shot out of the sky over Ukraine. The moments when news events spike media coverage and drown out other stories is precisely the time that we should be looking into Gaza and the West Bank. I need your help. This channel
How does the shrinking of the circle in fascism relate to the ever-expanding circle of whiteness? In times of comfort, or in times of fear that like your in-group has to expand, you can allow others into the white circle. Like in America, 64% of the country is white. Why? Because the Irish are white, because the Italians are white, because the Polish are white, because the Greeks are white, because the Jews are white. Okay? And you kind of need that, because you can't run the country with just WASPs being white any longer. So you have to expand the concept of whiteness. Okay? This channel is one of my favorites. GDF Official. They make incredible videos. They are criminally underrated. And I'm very fond of them. Love them. Go support them. So. Stop being so dramatic. This sort of thing has happened before without issue. German libs let spicy individuals have broad and exploitable powers in government to calm them down, and things turned out great. Yeah, famously. Things turned out really cool, like really chill right after that happened. You know, there was a little bit of an ideological diversity in the German government. I mean, come on now. Come on, when is a praetorian? I can't even say it right. Praetorian Guard ever gone wrong? Dude, just call it. It's a national guard. It's like a national police. I don't understand what you're saying. Just like it's just Jewish power. It's not white power. The party's called Jewish Power Party. Come on now. Everyone's overreacting. Oh, man. So, yeah. Things are going great. Things are going great in Israel right now. Just great. Now that Netanyahu is also given postponed the showdown by a month and then signed a document granting Itamar Ben-Gvir, again, like a literal fucking terrorist. A terrorist by not my standards, okay? Because I think Israel does a lot of things that would be considered terroristic that they do as a normal, as a part of regular process. He's a terrorist by Israel's standards. I know Lep, thank you for the 5, get the subs. Oh, this was funny as fuck here. I thought it was common knowledge to not cross train tracks when the lights are still flashing. Cops literally, I think, have such a sense of entitlement that they personally think that, like, they will be able to, I guess, they think they could just, like, take on a train sometimes. Like, it's so obviously a train, bro. Why did you think throwing on the fucking lights? Why did you think throwing on the lights is gonna let you fucking... It's so stupid, dude. These guys are such assholes, brother. They're so used to just, like, doing this on regular oncoming traffic. Like, he thought... God. It's just, you know. America is about to set up another militia with the collaboration of the Palestinian Authority to target militants of the resistance groups. Oh my God. Great. Of course, the Palestinian Authority is losing control. They're seen as like collaborators with the apartheid state. So great stuff. Make sure that they're also like even